Let's dive into a massive, kind of under-the-radar shift that's happening in tech funding. While all the headlines are screaming about a venture capital drought, there's this new, really powerful force that's quietly stepping in to fill the gap. So let's figure out who they are and why you should care.
Okay, let's just start with this number, 90%. This year, over 90% of all investment money from limited partners, it all went to the big, established brand-name VC firms. That leaves what? Just a tiny sliver for everybody else? For the new funds, the up-and-comers, the people betting on the really wild, early-stage ideas?
So that raises a pretty serious question, right? If all the cash is getting concentrated at the very top, where are the next game-changing startups supposed to find their first check? Who's going to fund the future when the main pipeline is just totally clogged?
Well, part of the problem is that the easy money party is over. You remember back in 2020, 2021, interest rates were at zero, and it felt like everyone wanted a piece of tech. These were the investment tourists. But now that things have cooled off, they've packed their bags, they've gone home, and they've left this huge funding vacuum behind.
And this brings us right to the heart of the issue. The early-stage startup world is facing a real, honest-to-goodness funding crisis. I mean, with venture funding and activity hitting historic lows, the whole ecosystem that's supposed to nurture new ideas is under some serious, serious pressure.
But just as things are looking kind of bleak, an unlikely hero is stepping onto the scene. And no, it is not your typical Silicon Valley player. We are talking about family offices. So what on earth is a family office? Well, it's basically a private, super professional firm that manages the massive fortune of a single family. They handle the whole shebang: investments, taxes, planning for the future, you name it, all under one roof for these ultra-wealthy families. Now, when you hear family office, your brain probably jumps to the huge, famous names. The Gates, Bezos, and Zuckerbergs of the world. And yeah, they're part of it. But they are just the tiny tip of the iceberg. The real story here is the thousands of other incredibly wealthy families who manage their fortunes very, very quietly, way out of the spotlight. And the scale we're talking about is just staggering. According to a recent report, it's estimated that these firms are managing around $1.72 trillion in assets. And that's just in North America. That is a mind-boggling amount of capital just sitting there, ready to be put to work. So here's where it gets really interesting. These quiet giants are changing things up. They're rewriting their investment playbook and becoming a serious force in early-stage venture capital, actively hunting for opportunities right where everyone else has pulled back. And look, this isn't just a hunch. The numbers prove it. As you can see right here, the family offices have seriously ramped up how much they're putting into alternative investments, which is the bucket that includes venture capital. It went from 22% back in 2021 all the way up to 30% in 2023. They are definitely leaning in.
And in fact, one JP Morgan report says that these alternative investments now make up a whopping 45% of their total portfolios. And if you look closer at this chart, you can see venture capital is a pretty significant piece of that pie, and it's growing. They're not just dipping their toes in the water anymore. They are diving in headfirst.
So, you might be asking, okay, why is this all happening right now? Well, it really boils down to three key things. First, you've got a generational shift. The younger folks taking over these fortunes grew up with tech and are way more comfortable investing in it. Second, the offices themselves are just getting more professional and sophisticated. And third, they see a huge opportunity to fill that void left by all those tourists. But family offices bring a lot more than just a checkbook to the table. They have this unique edge. You could almost call it a superpower in the investment world. And it's what we call patient capital. This advantage really comes down to a 1-2 punch. First, they provide that patient capital, which we'll talk about in a second. But just as important, they offer these deep, strategic partnerships that go way beyond just writing a check. So let's break that down. This quote here just nails it perfectly. You see, unlike a traditional VC fund that's on a strict 10-year clock and needs to get quick returns, family offices can think in terms of decades, even generations. This lets startups grow naturally without that constant pressure to sell out, which is a much healthier way to build a company.
And their second superpower, it's all about strategic value. I mean, think about it. These families often built their incredible wealth by actually running major businesses. So they bring these insane networks, deep expertise, and real hands-on operational knowledge. For a young startup, that kind of mentorship is absolutely priceless.
So, let's zoom out. What does this all actually mean for the future of technology and innovation? Because this isn't just some small trend. It could fundamentally change how the entire industry gets funded.
Now, of course, it's not a perfect fairy tale ending. There are still some real challenges. Family offices are famously private, so it can be tough to figure out what they're even looking for. They're not immune to market swings either. And hey, a lot of them are still pretty new to the venture capital game, so there's definitely a learning curve.
All right, so let's tie this all together with a bow. We started with a huge funding gap that was putting new ideas at risk. Then we saw how these family offices, with their trillions of dollars, are stepping right into that void. And with their unique blend of patient capital and real strategic value, this whole shift could be more than just a band-aid. It could be a real stabilizing force for the entire tech landscape.
Which leaves us with one last, pretty fascinating question to think about. As this massive, quiet wave of money keeps pouring into the startup world, could this be the very thing that ignites and sustains the next great tech boom? Only time will tell, right? Thanks for tuning in.